Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, DwyerVIP.com for premium picks from time to time. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. You know, boxing has a certain show component to it. The information we receive as fans sometimes is accurate, sometimes it's inaccurate. Let me point out that sometimes the inaccuracy comes from reporters, sometimes the inaccuracy comes from the fighters themselves, right? Let's call out a fighter right now who, quite frankly, is trying to weave a narrative for marketing reasons, right? As I said, there's a show business component. I'm not here to diss the guy. I'm just here to make sure that boxing fans are aware of when they're watching a performance. There's an article this morning on BoxingScene.com concerning Bernard Hopkins. It actually quotes Hopkins, right? Hopkins has a huge fight coming up in a week against Vazquez. Cloud, of course, got a gift decision last year against Gabriel Campillo. How much of a gift? I was watching the fight and I thought Campillo beat Cloud by several rounds, right? Not only that, I didn't think it was a fluke. I thought that Cloud had a problem with Campillo's lateral movement. Well, of course, on Boxing Scene this morning, Bernard Hopkins is quoted as saying that Naseem Richardson, his trainer, won't even allow him to watch the Campillo fight because, according to Hopkins, that fight doesn't really have any relevance to this fight, right? Cloud had a bad day that fight. It's not going to carry over to this fight. That fight has nothing to do with this fight, right? You know what? We know that story's inaccurate. How do we know? Because immediately after Campillo got robbed, according to the February 18th, 2012 edition, an article on Bad Left Hook, right? While the card was still going on, immediately after Campillo got robbed, apparently Bernard Hopkins went to Twitter and actually stated on Twitter that in his opinion, Gabriel Campillo got robbed. We know Hopkins saw the fight. You're kidding yourself if you think a technician like Bernard Hopkins hasn't looked at the fight, especially when it's the last fight for the young lion, the young champion he's about to face. In fact, why else do you think Bernard Hopkins has picked Vazquez for the fight? Right? Hopkins is a guy with a lot of options. I'm sure Hopkins could fight Nathan Cleverly. Right? A lot of people want to fight Bernard Hopkins. Hopkins at this point is really fighting more for legacy reasons than for belts. We already know Hopkins can win the light heavyweight championship. Why? Because he's already beaten multiple light heavyweight champions. Antonio Tarver ruled the roost a while back. Hopkins beat him. Jean Pascal had a belt. Hopkins beat him. Right? And so Bernard Hopkins knows he can beat light heavyweight champions. In my opinion, he's in the ring with Vazquez for exactly the same reason as to why he tweeted after Cloud's fight with Campillo that he thought Cloud lost the fight. Hopkins realizes that he has the lateral movement, quite frankly, to beat Cloud. Granted, Campillo is a southpaw. Hopkins is right-handed, but Hopkins knows how to move around the ring. He has the foot speed. We've seen it in fight after fight. He has the lateral movement. He can circle a guy. Just look at the Kelly Pavlik fight. So let's not kid ourselves. Bernard Hopkins right now doesn't want the press to focus too much on the limitations of his opponent, because if he beats Cloud, he wants it to look like he's just climbed Mount Everest. Let's get serious. Okay, on to another subject in boxing. Let me congratulate, and I do mean congratulate, Canelo. Saul Alvarez, on his very bold move in taking himself off the May 4th card that included Floyd Mayweather and Robert Guerrero. Right? The bottom line is economics. Saul Alvarez is one of the biggest draws in boxing. Quite frankly, he shouldn't be on anybody's undercard. He's a headliner. It's one thing to be on an undercard when you think that it's showcasing a fight you're going to have against the main event fighter, right? He can be on a Floyd undercard if he feels that this is just advertising for his fight against Floyd that's going to happen in both of their next fights. But apparently, when Canelo went to the Mayweather camp and said, hey, I want this in writing. I want a promise that you're going to fight me in the fall if we both win. And let me just point out, they might not, right? These are tough fights for both. But apparently when Canelo said, hey, look, I want a promise that I fight Floyd next, apparently the Mayweather people hit him with some political spin, right? Apparently Floyd has a policy where he never signs for future fights because he wants to focus on the guy in front of him in this fight. You know, that's political drivel. That's ridiculous. All I could say is businessmen all the time, you know, sign contracts that are in essence option contracts where they say, look, if this happens, then we'll go with this contract, right? All I can say is Canelo realized that he was being, in a word, exploited. He shouldn't be getting undercard money. He shouldn't be getting $2 million. He shouldn't be getting $4 million, whatever they were paying him, to be on the undercard when he can headline, especially against a tough opponent like Austin Trout, and get significantly more money than that. I believe what we're going to find out when Canelo fights Austin Trout is that Canelo is one of the biggest draws in the sport, right? And so what was really going on here, it's a tough sport, even financially, is that Floyd Mayweather was fighting on Cinco de Mayo weekend, a big boxing weekend, right, in Las Vegas, right? A weekend that has a lot to do with Mexican heritage, right? And of course, to generate more money for himself, Floyd Mayweather was including big box office Latino fighters on the boxing card, right? Floyd understands that having Canelo on the boxing card is probably going to get him several more viewers. In pay-per-view, you're getting money based literally per viewer, right? And so, of course, as that money comes in, if you're paying Canelo a flat rate, and if you're getting the lion's share of the money, then, of course, you're literally profiting off of people who are buying the pay-per-view really to see Canelo's fight, not even your fight, right? So don't get me wrong. Floyd remains a huge draw, no question about it. But I can tell you that I was in Vegas last year for the Cinco de Mayo weekend celebrations, right? Floyd was fighting Miguel Cotto. Canelo was on the undercard fighting Shane Mosley. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I was in some casino, I paid for some video feed of the fight. I can tell you that the Canelo fight had the crowd riveted. It was clear that to them, the Canelo fight was a co-feature. Dare I say it, had Canelo not been on that card, I don't think that card would have generated the money that it generated. So all I can say is, you know, congratulations, Canelo. I think Canelo, quite frankly, is going to get at least twice as much money as he would have gotten being on the Floyd card. And let me just say this, too. Let's say both of the guys win. You know, again, I have to applaud Canelo for calling out the best. He's an unbeaten fighter. He's young. He's in his prime. He wants to test himself. Who else is he going to call out? Right? He's calling out Floyd Mayweather, as he should. Boxing fans, quite frankly, should support elite fighters, unbeaten fighters, willing to risk their unbeaten status, who are calling out the best in the sport. Okay? Let's talk about a couple other things. You know, George Groves was a Frank Warren fighter. George Groves has moved on to Carl Froch's group. I believe it's Matchbook or something like that. Right? As a result of George Groves switching from one group to the other, understand, in my opinion, and you can do your own research, that's the reason why the Ricky Burns-Miguel Vazquez fight is being postponed. I believe they're trying to tell you that the fight's being postponed because one of those fighters has a viral infection. Let's get real. We're skeptics. We know better. George Groves was on the undercard for that fight. Right? George Groves was supposed to be one of the box office magnets to make that card make money. Right? And again, that's why people put on boxing cards. Folks, it's a business. They want to make money. And so, of course, George Groves' move to a different boxing group got him off the card, the Frank Warren card, right? Because he's no longer with Frank Warren. And without Groves as a box office attraction to help sell the fight suddenly had some uncertainty financially, right? And so, of course, they're postponing the fight. I guarantee you they're now going to announce some other undercard fight that, of course, is going to be geared to give viewers value, induce people to actually come and watch the fight. So when a promoter tells you that a fight's being postponed, and in this case a second time, because one of the combatants has one of these ailments that doesn't exactly show up on an MRI. In other words, if they told you that either Burns or Vazquez had a torn shoulder, you could investigate further and say, hey, show me photos of the injury, and they could tell you, hey, here's the MRI or something like that. When they start telling boxing fans that the reason for the postponement is something like a viral infection, understand, hard to prove, hard to dispute, right? You remember when Danny Garcia had a rib problem, and Garcia himself took a photo of his own rib cage to show viewers that his fight with Zab Judah was being postponed legitimately. Understand, I don't believe we're going to get any photos of any viral infection that caused the delay of this fight. I believe that this fight was delayed because George Groves is no longer on the boxing card, right? By the way, before I forget, Floyd Mayweather, of course, has now put Daniel Ponce de Leon on the undercard for his fight against Robert Guerrero. Understand, Ponce de Leon is also a big draw with Latino fans. And so Mayweather is the consummate businessman, right? He understands that he wants an undercard that's going to attract viewers, right? Food for thought. Finally, let me just say this. I heard that Tomas Adamek, of course, decided he didn't want to fight Kubrat Pulev because, in his opinion, there wasn't a lot of money in that fight. I believe that the real reason is that Adamek realized that there wasn't a lot of money in losing to Kubrat Pulev, right? That's what's going on here, because keep in mind, you're not really paid for the fight you're in. You're paid for your last fight. In other words, given that if Adamek beats Pulev, he would be a mandatory for the heavyweight championship. Even if they were paying you know, just a few dollars for the Pulev fight, Ademic, if he thought he could win that fight, would be rewarded handsomely, because he would then get 7+ figures, right? 7 figures, well into the 7 figures, in his next fight for the heavyweight championship. Instead, I believe Ademic looked at the tape of Pulev and understood that at Ademic's age, especially after some questionable wins over Eddie Chambers and Steve Cunningham, at Ademic's age, Ademic doesn't want to risk a loss right now, right? I believe Ademic understood that a Pulev fight was very dangerous. So now, right, we have another fight on the horizon. Because Ademic won't fight Pulev, believe it or not, the powers that be have ordered Steve Cunningham to fight Tyson Fury in a box-off for the right to fight Kubrat Pulev. Now, I'll do a video on Cunningham Fury, right? Just know I expect Tyson Fury to win that fight. But let me just say this. Is it me? Or are they killing off all the promising heavyweights before they even get a chance to fight for the heavyweight title? Don't we have enough champions, right? Vladimir Klitschko, Vitaly Klitschko, Alexander Povetkin. Don't we have enough champions where Tyson Fury, who's unbeaten, and Kubrat Pulev, who's unbeaten, should be able to fight for the heavyweight championship without fighting each other first? I mean, isn't this a little bit ridiculous? Also you really have to wonder, given the inactivity of some of these heavyweight champions, when is the last time Alexander Povetkin fought, right? How come these heavyweight champions are fighting like once or twice a year when there's so many obvious paydays out there and when there's so many qualified contenders? How come none of the heavyweight champions have leapt at the opportunity to fight Tyson Fury? Because you know that if you fight Tyson Fury, especially in the United Kingdom, you're going to get a sellout. So why are they so slow? In fact, let me go one step further. How come David Haye hasn't been able to secure a deal with any of these heavyweight champions? Right? Vladimir Klitschko can turn down David Haye. He's fought David Haye. He can say, been there, done that. Why should I fight Haye again when there's Tyson Fury and a bunch of other guys out there? Right? Okay, I'll buy that. Vitaly Klitschko, guys, isn't there enough money to go around for a Haye-Vitaly Klitschko fight to be made? Also, Alexander Povetkin, why isn't he calling out David Haye? David Haye is a charismatic guy. A lot of people know David Haye. Dare I say it, more boxing fans, I believe, know David Haye than know Alexander Povetkin. So if I'm Alexander Povetkin and I'm trying to get credibility, I'm trying to win over some boxing fans, why am I not calling out David Haye? Right? I'll give Povetkin credit. He has been calling out Vladimir Klitschko, and I can't blame a champ for, again, trying to take on the best opponent out there. Right? But, of course, if Vladimir Klitschko is not going to fight you for whatever reason, why not call out other guys? Well, all I'm saying is something's a bit fishy to me when Tyson Fury is being set up where he has to beat Steve Cunningham, then he has to beat Kubrat Pulev just to get a shot at a heavyweight title. Did Manuel Char have to jump through these kind of hoops to get a shot at the heavyweight title? This seems a little bit suspect to me. Also, I'm hearing now that Vladimir Klitschko is going to fight Pianeta next. Wow, is there really an outcry for Vladimir Klitschko to fight Pianeta? I mean, don't get me wrong. Pianeta's unbeaten. But it is curious to me that with Povetkin wanting to fight him, And with Tyson Fury wanting to fight him, with David Haye wanting to fight him, and I would say that with Kubrat Pulev being unbeaten, with all of these, in fact, Povetkin's unbeaten, with all of these big fights on the horizon, 37-year-old Vladimir Klitschko has instead chosen to fight someone else, right? You know, as we look at fighters and as we say, gee, let's judge the guy's legacy and stuff like that, let's just say that Vladimir Klitschko is leaving some legacy on the table here, right? Food for thought. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.